you want it saved.
Oh,
Did
got
we
it.
get a notification just now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So this is just to help understand why we divide by 9. Or, as said in the chat, you can multiply by 0.1111. That's the same thing. So in pink or light purple, whatever shows up on your screen, that represents the total amount you're asking RSA for. So you see those are 9 equal parts, then this part on the edge is equal to the same size as one of those 9. So this ends up being 10% of the total amount. That's the way the regulation reads. 10% of everything you need to run the program has to be paid for by the program. We call it match. So as Rachel said in the chat, dividing by 9 or multiplying by 0.111 is essentially the same thing. And then everybody's indirect rate is going to be different.
Right.
Your tribe negotiates that somewhere. So for us, we have a low indirect rate. Some tribes have really, really high indirect rates, depending on what they're including in their indirects. So for us annually, this amount adjusts up and down.
Christopher, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So you said everything that it takes to run the program, your 10% match is still, the indirect costs are still part of that, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So trying to imagine laying this box over the top of this box.
Okay. And then, so the tribe is going to pay some of my salary. Would that count a part of the match? Okay.
That's awesome. That would be a great way to count match.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
The numbers are confusing to me.
No problem.
Okay. You guys all good with that? I'm gonna stop the sharing now. Okay. Rachel, you've been doing this a while. What are some recommendations you give? There's several people who've joined since we first started. So what are some recommendations you're going to give? Most of us haven't been around as long as you.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted. This will only be my second proposal.
Oh,
So I came on, I'm wanting to think, trying to think. I came on board and I think it was the years that it was postponed a few times.
oh,
Then I wrote once and this is my second time. So I would probably defer to there are a few other people on here who are actually more seasoned than I am in the director role. I've been in VR for, a long time, not quite as long as some, but in other capacities. So I'm still getting my ducks lined up here.
So who here has been a director, written a proposal, written at least 2 or maybe 3 or more proposals themselves? Oh, Ramona, Amanda. Awesome. You should be the ones leading this discussion then.
Mary.
Oh, it looks like Mary. Okay.
She'd be the one.
What was the question, Christopher?
Well, really,
joining late and I'm hearing the discussion, but not the original question.
the question is really for those of you who are a lot more seasoned in writing a grant, what are some basic recommendations you give to those of us who haven't written very many?
Let's see. I would say try to build your later year budgets higher than your first, because things are going to get more expensive. I heard Amanda talking about staff cost, but just things in general. And if you don't do that in the front end, it's gonna hurt you on the end because you won't have the funds and you'll be trying to cut corners providing your services. So I would try to make my budgets larger as the years pass by within the the framework of the performance measures of the 35,000 and the 10,000. Consider those things. Because I guess another thing that I think about is, you want to think out the design of your program well and receive input from your consumers that you serve to make sure that your program is designed in a way that's going to meet their needs, because once you put it on paper, that again, that's it for 5 years unless you make a major ordeal to go back to the funding agency and talk about changes. So I would definitely, we're getting late in the game now. We're already in March, but there's still some time. But I would say I stay in grant writing mode all the time. I mean, I collect data all the time. I do focus groups all the time and think about future changes, and I just keep a kind of a running book about things that I want to implement later or consider later, based on that kind of input, because that's something that can be a struggle if you get 1 or 2 years in a grant and you've set things out one way, but you want to change them, and I think that it can be done, but there's some approvals that have to happen. But if it's in your proposal, the way you're going to do things, it makes things easier. Those are a couple of things I think about. Having your staff involved heavily and making sure they buy in to everything that you're writing out, because they're going to be the ones carrying it out.
So similar to that, Mary, what I did in our grant proposal last time, I took a look at the 10-year history of our agency's indirect rate, and I looked to see if there was a pattern of it going up or down, or if it just was pretty stable. I could see that it had a tendency to go slightly up every year, not a lot, but slightly up. So I built that into the grant, that the indirect rate would go up by a small amount. I did build in staff salary increases into the grant proposal. And then at the end, when I figured out how much we were going to need, I looked to see if the GEPRA numbers, when applying those, if I thought we could realistically reach those numbers. And so how many IPEs would we serve, and how many successful closures would we have? And seeing that it was a little ambitious, but not by a big stretch. So I felt fine with going with what I wrote, and they approved it all.
That's great. I did the same kind of process. I just created a little Excel spreadsheet in the beginning for my budget work to think about what I was spending now and what was probably going to be a projection. That indirect is kind of an unknown for us. It's been all over the place, but that's a good thing. I would definitely write down what your budget requests are and plug in those performance measures just to see where you stand with that. And then to see, are they feasible? And if your budget requires certain performance measures that aren't feasible for you because you know that they're not, then you got to look at decreasing that budget. So I went through some of the same processes.
Yeah. So Alana put in the chat, where do you put that information? I don't remember exactly in the grant application where it goes, but you do have to write a narrative form of the budget. So you're writing it out as if it's a book you're writing. And I do it as year 1. this is all of our budgets, all the things we're spending money on, year 2, and then I do one that's a grand total of all 5 of those years put together.
Well, I know that RSA has a format that you use to put the budget
Right.
in.
There's actually, yes, there ends up being a table that you fill all of that in,
Yeah.
but there's a narrative form.
Pain in the,
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yep. Good. So what about you, Ramona? What are some recommendations you give to people who are newer at doing this?
start now. My problem really is trying to work with the grants office and our financial office, because they don't understand how RSA works with dividing and figuring out the tribal match. They want to do their own thing, and then the problem I've been facing here is the database that we have for our finances. They have it all lumped together, and so I have to divide out the match, but my accountant this time did a pretty good job of separating that out. But the budgets to me is the hardest, and then setting up the goals and following through with that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
My writing skills aren't great, but I had my crew help me this year. But like Mary said, it's good to have them help you go through the grant and put in their ideas, and because they're the one that's going to be doing it, like she says. So I agree with Mary.
Great. And how about you, Amanda? Same question.
About budgets?
No, I was really asking you as a more seasoned
Oh.
grant writer.
Well, I had every intention of starting back in January, and I just kept putting it off. It's hard when you're also training brand new staff.
Mhm.
You know, trying to attend the tax. I guess I'm going to carve out time, and unfortunately I'll probably be here till 7 or 8 o'clock at night. At least a couple times this week. Next week is our big convention. One thing I did do was get our resolution back in January when our e-board met. For Alaska, we are still kind of going around in a circle on our DVR, state DVR MOU. I guess if we had to do it all over again, we should have done that in the fall. I know I might be using the 2020 version of our MOU. Things have changed for many of our TVRs in Alaska. So about half of us have to have the president sign off on an MOU now. The other half, they can still sign as a TVR director. There's no financial obligation in our MOU. So I actually tried to argue my case, but that was shot down. I don't know how anyone else does it. I did compare and contrast from 5 years ago, and there were a couple of changes in the application where they actually deleted a couple of things. I cross-referenced. I went over those at the last meeting. I know Jacob Timmons was on, and he, Aleutian Prebeloff, he was going to go back. So definitely double check. If you've already written a grant, you already have access to the grant that was written 5 years ago. I mean, I don't want to just pull it up and change the dates. That's not appropriate. But a lot of the way we're going to continue to do what's working. We contract with mentors, whether it's a one-time pay to help a client learn a cultural task, whether it's beading, fishing, baking native foods, selling cuss or slippers, and you know, the majority of our IPEs are subsistence related, or like a self-employment beadwork. One lady making lotions. I will have to add, well, I guess the one good thing is I'm able to use our 477 plan language and incorporate that into my new grant, which again, the goal of 477 is to create self-sufficiency for our, help create self-sufficiency for our tribal members, to be more self-sufficient, to do things in the cultural way, you know, having that cultural sensitivity. What separates us from state voc rehab? Plus I received, when we got the grant award, we actually received our peer review comments. And it says in parentheses, well, it says G5 technical review form, and in parentheses it says new. And it takes all the comments, the strengths and weaknesses from that prior grant. And so I am going back specifically to those areas and using their comments. And I know to make this year's grant better. I know Lenora mentioned at a grant writing, I want to say the one I went to was in Oklahoma. You know, you read the application and you use RSA's language and specific words to then answer the question. I don't know how anyone else does it. I literally have the old 5-year grant pulled up. I clicked on track changes. I've deleted sections. I've added new sections. I literally copied and pasted from our 477 plan. I start out with like a 1 or 2 page history of Tanana Chiefs. I'm going to incorporate 477 language into that so it goes together. And then I just start answering each of the questions. Need for project. You know, a lot of the questions they're asking, they're the same exact questions that I answered in 2009. You know, how many ways can you answer the same exact question?
Right.
I would defer to, you know, Gail and Mary, Ramona, you know, how do you do that? Do you start from scratch every 5 years?
I don't start from scratch. I take my last grant proposal and the application kit, and I read through the application kit to see what they're asking me to respond to, and I check it against my old proposal and I update the sections. If there's a big update, of course, I know I've got to update that whole section. So once I find out the questions that they're asking me to respond to, then I start looking over my last grant proposal, and obviously I update all of my data and that type of thing. And anything that has changed, obviously. This is old age just hit me. I lost my complete train of thought. But after I get my basic plan, my outline from my grant proposal, then I just start responding to it. There obviously are sections. Okay, old age just kicked back in again. What I was going to say was that there are obviously sections that repeat. They ask the same thing, and I repeat it. I repeat it in different sections. And sometimes I say it more succinctly the second time and refer back to a section. But I do use the application kit to order my grant. I think Jana's got something to say.
Yeah, go ahead, Jana.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't start from new. This is good. I'm not doing it this time. I'll do it next year or in 2 years. But I will do exactly what Mary said. I'm going to look at what they're looking for. What you said, Amanda, look for the language that they're looking for, new ideas that they're looking for. They're gonna be looking for transition stuff. So if you're doing transitions or things around transition, we're looking for numbers around youth in your community. And so looking for those statistics that I would be throwing in, because they're going to be wanting, and not necessarily the readers, because we don't know who the readers might be, but more so it when and if RSA looks at it, but they're not really going to be in the meat of the grant necessarily until the very end. And the numbers come up, and then the statistical information is all going to be new stuff, and it's going to be new stuff in the 5 years. Fentanyl wasn't a thing 5 years ago for us. It's a real big thing now. And so what who are our partners now with those agencies that we're now working with fentanyl? Why are we working with fentanyl, and who are our partners now because of fentanyl? Or the whole opioid crisis. You know, there's different players now in our toolkit because of that crisis. And the transition piece, there's different players in our toolkit now because of transition or reaching out to the youth. So those numbers and statistics will look a little different in our grant, and that conversation will be a little different. But as for the overall flavor of our grant, it will be similar to 5 years ago. But there are things in our community that have changed in the last 5 years.
Great, thanks, Jana.
Oh, and then, sorry, and then the other thing is the budget piece. COVID has happened, training, you know, increasing salaries probably have gone on. And so your budget, I think Ramona was saying that as I came on, that is, I think, the more difficult piece of the grant, because you want to make sure that budget sustains you for the 5 years. And you're really thinking about that 5-year plan for your budget, because it's not just, oh, what am I going to do the next year? You're really trying to plan out the next 5 years. And what does your tribe have for budget increases, salary increases, you know, that increase in just inflation of every service. And so it's really being mindful of that when you're creating your budget.
Good. So in the chat section, so Cami asked about the GIPRA numbers, and they're based off of what we ask RSA. Gail, you're asking about the assurances. I know for me, I put all of the assurances using the exact language that the regulations have, and then it just write one sentence. We assure that we're going to take care of this. Ramona asked how many support letters. I've never heard anybody say an exact number that works, but it is, I had someone tell me it's a little silly to go out and get 20 or 30 support letters. That's a waste of time, but getting a handful or more would be great. And I think last time I got 10, and this time we'll probably have 5. I didn't want to put a whole lot of effort into it. I just wanted some. And then I would think it's fine to get them from any place, whether it be another program within the tribe or other tribes or partnering agencies. So we asked our state, and they complied really quickly. So we have a good relationship with our state DBR, and so we got a support letter from them right away. Our program overlaps with 2 other tribal voc rehab programs. So we have support letters from those 2, and we have a couple of community partners in this area that we got support letters from.
Can I just say for support letters, I would say, who do you have in your grant? Who did you say you're going to work with in your grant? I would get support letters from those agencies or groups. Again, not 20 of them because they're not going to care. But the big players like DVR, DSB, other tribal TVR programs in your area that you might be working with, and other programs or education programs that you specifically put in your grant that you said you're going to be working with. I saw somebody put a veterans office, or your 477 program, or those types of things, not just picking, we worked with somebody, or your WSRC maybe, or your CAP program, those types of program that you're going to really collaborate with on your grant.
So Atlanta, I'll send my templates out on the 121 listserv. And it'll be exactly the letter I send to our community partners. I send it to them in case they don't want to take the time to write their own letter. It's quick and easy. They can just fill in their own name, where it goes, and call it, put a signature on it and send it back. It makes it really quick and easy for them.
You could even probably chat GPT a letter too and send it to a
It's
community
true.
partner.
Great, all really good stuff. I remember the first time I saw Lenore do a grant writing session at the conference quite some time ago. One of the things she said that really struck me was to make sure that the opening section, which is just explaining the need for the grant, even though it's only worth 10 points out of 100, it still sells the idea that you actually need it and you're actually capable of implementing it. So I make sure that we put a lot of effort into that. It's probably, for me, the longest section of all of them, because I'm really spelling out all of the challenges that our community faces, and showing that we do have a high rate of disabilities here, and that there are a lot of people who are going unserved. So I use a lot of data there, and then explaining why I think, not just why we need it, but why we're capable of implementing a program. So I always appreciated that insight that she gave, and I've used it. I think we've answered every question in the chat. Are there any did we miss any?
No, but I wanted to know how your guys' weather is.
So are you having problems up there, Ramona?
I hope your roof is strong this time, right?
Yes, I don't have no cave-ins,
Yeah.
either my home or the office. No, we got like 8 to 12 inches over the weekend.
That's a lot in one weekend.
And we were kind of shut down probably 4 hours on Monday. And that was crazy. I got stuck in my yard yesterday, and I hardly ever get stuck. That's how bad it was. So I was just wondering how you guys' weather was.
I am at about almost 70 degrees. We've got about 83.
I don't want to hear that, Rachel.
But I'm jealous of a lot of my friends and family in California and Nevada who had, like 42 inches in a short period of time, because I miss that sometimes. So you be jealous of me and I'll be jealous of you, Mona.
We have family coming down from North Pole, and they think they can make it from there to Bellingham in 2 days. I'm like, you are crazy. We had snow this morning, just flakes, nothing major.
We-
But
we
when
had-
it blows over here and that snow, oh my God. Sometimes we had a whiteout. I mean, knuckle bearing drive home and my mind from work, it's 13 miles, but it takes me almost a half hour. But it's supposed to let up and then it's supposed to snow again, so. We'll see. We live in Idaho. That's what we expect.
Gail just asked a question. It'll take me a second to dig it up, Gail, but I'll be able to share with you things in the grant application that are changed. Just give me a moment. So number one, the definition of the GEPRA numbers have changed. Sorry. So I took the instructions from 5 years ago and literally laid them side by side with the instructions for this time and went through every line to see what would be the same or different. Almost everything's identical word for word, but there are a few small changes. I'm sorry, it's taking me a second to find them. So I wish that this was, I wish that it were numbered, like the pages were numbered. I manually went in and numbered my pages. So for me, it's on page 27, but there's a new section called section 5 inside of
Section what?
sorry. Sorry, it's so the heading of G, quality of the project evaluation, and then it has numbered, I don't want to call them paragraphs exactly, but number 5, that one is a new paragraph. And in number 5, there's a paragraph A and B. Those are really the new parts of that. So it's in section G. And it's number 5, in general accordance with the Office of Management and Budgets guidance.
Christopher, do you have the electronic copy that you could screen share?
No, sorry. Okay. And there's a part in there. It's started with the letter B. It has a letter B and it says prohibiting the purchase of certain telecommunication and video surveillance equipment. So I guess we're basically supposed to say we're not going to use this money to purchase surveillance equipment or do surveillance either. And then there is a Roman numeral 6 that's called award administration information. And in that section, number 3, open licensing requirements, that's new. And lastly, as I mentioned before, the GEPRA numbers, that's listed as number 5. And for me, it's on page 30 of my document I printed out, but the performance measure, there's the same ones that we've always been used to, is the $10,000 per IPE and that sort of thing, but we've got, it's the same ones that were on our APR that we had to turn in January. It's just worded. I find them worded weird. I did actually send August a request. I built some formulas and sent them to him and said, are these formulas accurate for what you're trying to get at? So
Well, I remember them saying that the annual performance report was gonna change next year, so maybe this is why. But I don't know. I'm gonna look at it now that you're saying that to see if that might be the reason why.
yeah, I mean, it's very, in my opinion, it's very poorly worded. So let's see. Sections that have changed. So Gail, do you actually have the do you have the new directions, and are you finding what I'm trying to identify here?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My G in the application package is evaluation language for the genetic application process. So it's the evaluation. So that's my G. Section G of the application package.
Yeah, it's supposed to be quality of the project evaluation. It's worth 10 points.
Oh, you're in the section criteria.
Yeah. Table of contents out. So, yes, sorry. You're right. Yes, selection criteria for applications. It says section C on the table of contents.
Where are you finding the GEPRA information? Are the questions?
Give me just a, so there is a table of contents. Oh, it's not gonna. The table of contents in that, it says selection criteria for applications,
Yes.
section C, like Charles.
Yes.
Sorry,
Yes.
better from right. Might be
Can I-
section.
Can I pull this up for you?
Yeah, yeah.
Let
Can
me-
you?
Yeah, I have it right here. Can you see it on my screen?
Yes.
Can you still see it on my screen?
Formatting. No, I could for
okay.
a second there.
I have to leave it here.
Okay.
Let me
Formatting
blow
is
it
a
up
little
for you.
off, but
What's up?
the formatting is a little off.
Yeah, it's because it put
Okay.
it over in Google Docs.
Okay. So go towards the end of what's labeled there, section B, like boy.
Right up here.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So
Okay.
if you could scroll down about 30 pages.
30 pages.
Yeah, roughly. Mm-hmm.
That section. So you want me to go to section B? Is that where you want me to go?
Yeah, go up a little bit. Okay, don't go so fast.
It's
Okay.
like 4 pages from section C.
Yeah. I think you keep seeing it, but second here. See where you're at.
So
Yep,
Yeah,
there
I think
you go.
like one or two more down, isn't it?
Yeah. Licensing.
This open
Stay
license.
right there. The open licensing is new. That one right there that you're showing. That's new from the last one 5 years ago. Okay, go down a little bit. Down to number 5. Right there, performance measures.
Here.
Yep. So that A and then the B1 and then the number 2 under that, that is the exact language from our APR. And that is the part that I sent an email to August saying, okay, I didn't say the words, it looks poorly worded to me, but when you read letter A and then B1, they're nearly identical. Letter A has a prepositional phrase with a comma that letter B does not have. Everything after that phrase in letter A is identical to what's in letter B.
If I remember correctly, I talked with him about that exact thing while we were doing, you know, when our performance report was due.
Yeah. So number 2 and number 3 are new as compared to the last grant application that we did. So I find it a little weird, but I'm going to answer the question, but a little weird that I'm going to actually guess how many people are going to be closed, not successful after being served. That's basically what number 2 means to me.
We've
Yeah.
always had number 3. It's never been like this spelled out in this way, but
Right.
it's always been how they determined whether the program was appropriate to serve budget wise. So when they decide whether we make the eligibility criteria to serve as a program, because they may come back to you, say your program is perfect, but you don't meet the GEPR measures of C or D. And then we would have to adjust our budget
Right.
or our numbers served. So the 3 has always existed. It's just now put in here, but it's always been in the application.
Just a side comment, since your formatting is a little odd, it's actually C and D are their own paragraph. So 1, 2, and 3 are part of paragraph B. And then C and D are their own.
So for, let's see, which one is it? So for 2, that would be basically, so B1, if I remember correctly, kind of looking at this, that would be what some of us used to call status 26. It's a successful closure. We closed their case after they were employed successfully in their goal job for at least 90 days. And then number 2 would be what we used to call status 28, which is also called an unsuccessful closure, where for whatever
Right.
reason, after they received services, the case was closed, whether they passed away, whether they moved away, whether they decided to go on Social Security. So, and that doesn't go against any programs. We don't get dings for those, but
No,
they
right.
still want to know how many people closed unsuccessfully.
Right. Yeah, the question was really in paragraph A, just above B, that is worded very similarly to B1.
Well, that is basically B1 and number 2 put together. I hear what you're saying, and I stumble over it. Every time I read it, I stumble. But
Mhm.
if you think about it, and I clarified with August, it's coming back to me now. It's B1 and 2 put together. And then if it's a percentage, if it's asking for the percentage, then you divide it by, gosh, how did I?
Sure.
But actually, it's A is everybody exiting the program for whatever reason. B is all of the, B1 is who's ever exit with work, employment outcome.
Yeah, A is B1 and 2 added together, but not, we don't
I
count
would-
like our not eligible in the first place if they're never
Yeah, so I personally see A more like how Jan is explaining it. Because for me, B1 and B2 are only people who have ever had an IPE, whereas letter A to me means everybody who ever applied to the program and then exited. So that includes the people who were determined not eligible, the people who were determined eligible and then never came back.
But it says after receiving an under employment, the percent of individuals who leave the program with an employment outcome after receiving services in the IPE.
Yeah, what
So
I'm
it's
saying
not
is,
that whole group that you're saying.
no. Let me rephrase that then. Of all those exiting the program, all those who exited the program is everybody who applied and exited. So you have the entire group of people who exited the program. That includes those who had an IPE and those who did not. As the denominator, the numerator in that fraction is the people who left the program with an employment outcome. What is that percent?
Correct. Sorry, didn't let you finish.
Yeah. So then B1 to me is so similar. To me is all the people who exited with an employment outcome divided by all the people who had an IPE. But I don't know if that's right. In any case, I sent all the formulas I'm working off of to August and asked him to review it to see if I'm correct.
Yeah, it can be so much more. It
Right.
could be worded in a much better manner.
Yeah.
Or they could just give us a formula of
Could have
exactly
given
what
us a
they want.
formula.
Yes.
So we all are doing it the same way.
Correct. So we're all
That
doing
would be
it the same
too
way.
easy.
So the question was asked earlier, where are the GEPRs? This is the section with the GEPRs. These are the GEPRs. So technically the GEPRs are paragraph C and D.
And I think it's still within quality of project service. At least that's where it was 5 years ago.
I had a question. So are we specifically answering those numbers on that or no?
I didn't understand your question, Alana.
So the one that you clicked on with those GIPRA measures and stuff, there's like little questions or sayings in there. Are we answering those too?
Yeah,
Or is it
everything.
just telling us these are the requirements and
No, you have to say something in your grant about every single thing, every section that's in these directions you have to address in your grant application.
because you notice in some spots that ask, that are saying something, but I'm not sure if it's asking me the question or not. It just says A, B, C. So I'm assuming it's, oh, this is what we're going to follow, or this is what they're saying. I actually have to write something in those.
Yep.
Amanda, you said the GIPRA were in the quality of project services is where it was to be addressed.
That's where I identified it in my grant. Now one of those, we have a separate form in grants.gov to be completed. See if I can find that real quick. and I'll drop it in the chat. Because I've already done it, and that's actually it's like the one thing that's completed in my grants.gov. Where did I put it? Because you have to fill it in. It's not like an attachment. And I think it was an attachment last time. Gosh, why can't I find
You're saying it was
anything?
a form that you filled in and then you put it in you said it was a form you fill in?
Right. So there's text box in grants.gov when you pull up that form. And gosh, why am I not finding it? Okay, here it, oh, no, that's 2019. Where's the new one? Oh, it's GEPA, G-E-P-A. And I'm going to drop it in the chat. Okay, hold on. You want me to share my screen?
Yeah, can you unshare, Janet?
I have the button, so I think I already have the ability. Can you see it?
Yeah. So that has to do with an equality statement, so to speak. I think it's related to education, if I remember right, but it's required because we're funded under the Department of Education. So every grant in the Department of Education has to do this part.
Correct.
So it looks different on grants.gov because it's a fillable form.
Right.
And I know in the chat there was someone, I think Alana, still having issues getting into grants.gov. If you have an authorized organizational representative at your agency who could help you with that. So this is my Word document, and I literally just recopied exactly what the form asks for. Then I wrote up my little narrative and I copied and pasted into the form. Now it might be too wordy. These were some notes that are on that grants.gov form, but it's pretty much exactly what I submitted 5 years ago. I believe I took language from our 477 plan that encompasses the barriers identified. What steps will you take to address such barriers to equitable access and participation in the proposed project or activity?
Yeah, a copy of the form does, if you print off the PDF of all of the instructions, a copy of that form is included.
Amanda, it's Angie with APIA. Hi. So on the quality of personnel, how many staff resumes and job descriptions are needed?
Good question. I know Lenore answered it early on. Does anyone remember her exact answer? Because I actually had 2 points taken off 5 years ago because they felt like one of the staff I hired really didn't meet the requirements. They looked at her resume and compared it to the job description. I think I was given 1 point back somehow. I'd have to read that section, but that particular peer reviewer did really pay attention. So I'm not sure. Do you remember what the answer was, Christopher? Because at this point, I mean, key personnel like RSA should be consulted if I were to leave the company and TCC wants to rehire the project director. They're supposed to submit the resume to RSA project officer and get kind of final approval. But RSA has never approved my two staff under me, but I've always included them in the grant. This year, it's a little different. I have a vacancy and I have a non-tribal member. So even though they've lived in the area for quite some time, they have extensive behavioral health and substance use disorder qualifications, you know, and we're still in that training phase. So I'm not sure how to address that either. I'm definitely putting myself in there. In the past, I've put my supervisor's resume and job description, but I don't even think that's required because they're looking for key project personnel.
Yeah, it
I-
says,
Go ahead, Angie.
application encourages applications for employment from persons who are members of groups. But it doesn't have like A or a B or whatever section, like the rest of the stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'll be putting a resume of all of our staff and my supervisor and me, and all of our position descriptions as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Amanda, I've never heard of points being taken off of for your resumes and job descriptions. I've always attached all of our resume or had a job description and saying we need to hire for this position if we didn't currently have somebody in that position. But I've always attached all of our resumes, job descriptions for the positions needed to do the work of the grant, because they need to connect your budget to your grant too, to show that you need these people to do the work of the budget and the budget to do the work of the grant, so that you need to show that connection. Man, I have never heard that before.
Yeah.
If anything, I would err on leaving resumes off and adding job descriptions for sure. Add job descriptions. And at least put your director's resume.
Yeah, this is what they wrote. The job description for the counselor does not match what is presented as qualifications needed for the position as listed on the job notice. Based on the comparison between the narrative and the job announcement, the counselor does not have qualifications for this position. And it's, you know, they barely met minimum.
Well, when I have my grant, I include all my staff, but I only have like 5. But I did put in for a new position for this year, this new grant, so. And it just says vacant, and I put full-time employee with our name and a little brief description of what their roles and responsibilities are, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, the project personnel, it was 15 points possible. I scored 13. And 2 of the 3 peer reviewers both commented. The one was only going to give me 10 points, but they upped it to 13. So then the average became 13.
They must have got training on that year or something. Like, you need
Right.
to look at job descriptions, and
Right.
because
Yeah,
I have never heard of that.
me either. I can't imagine that. Yeah.
So
Good
someone
to know.
suggested leaving the resumes off and only, because that would be in my attachments, the job description.
Well, so when I'm looking at my reviewers from last time, my general way of doing it is I try, so you're supposed to have 3 reviewers, and I put all of their reviews side by side, and I look for what is the same on each of them. Because that, if they all notice some weakness, then I want to address that as a top priority. But there were some discrepancies between the 3 reviewers we had last time, and all those things where they were discrepant, I just said, I'm not making that a priority. If I have time to get to whatever this was, I'll take care of it. But I am taking care of the one thing that they all agreed on that was a weakness. So I'm making sure that spot is taken care of.
The only thing about leaving that off, Amanda, is it's asking for quality of project personnel. So they probably will want to see, again, making that connection back to who you hired, the job that they're going to do back to your grant. So leaving that out might cause you to lose points too. So I would just look at, do the all 3 line up? I don't know if they're all probably, I don't know if they're new people now, but do their job description now match who they are, or do they get the training now that meets the job description?
Yeah, I definitely have someone who meets the job description criteria.
Because it also, we have to tell a story too, and that story has to be easy for them to see. And so I think, and not overwhelming them either. So not overwhelming them with the letters of interest, but also having that story like, oh, they see you've got the people that you need that can take this money and run with it. Or no, you need to staff up here because you need to bring a few people on still. And, but yeah, I think you're best attaching as much around that area as you can.
And then what about the people above us? Do you folks include your immediate supervisor or the director of the whole department?
I never have, but I've never paid for them.
Right, yeah. And that, like 10 years ago, there was confusion that my immediate supervisor director shouldn't be charged to the grant, and they weren't. I mean, I bolded in kind. So I think I'm definitely writing it differently. I won't, I'll highlight that we're under workforce development, under a certain division, and we're under the 477 plan, but I'm not gonna name names like I did the last 3 times.
Well, yeah, last grant I did include my supervisor and my supervisor's supervisor, who's the executive director of the agency. I did it only because I wanted to make sure that it was clear that the agency, not just our program, but the agency has an interest in quality staff. And so I use that as kind of a selling point of not just our program, but of the tribe as a whole. So also talked about the qualifications of our bookkeeper and our compliance department. This time I'm only including my supervisor's resume, but nothing was said on my review last time that had to do with having resumes of other people outside of our program.
Gail, were you going to say something? I just wanted to say too that some tribes have a lot of turnover in those positions, and sometimes they get moved around in tribes a lot. Like you might be under the education department, then they might move you over to the workforce department. So if that happens to you, that's why I would suggest not putting that person. But if you're pretty stable, or you're paying part of that salary out of your grant, then I would suggest putting that person in. And again, like Christopher, if you have an accounting department where there's a lot of turnover and that person might not have that degree that comes in behind them, I would just be careful about putting specific people and resumes in that you know that there's a lot of turnover in departments.
That's a good point. Angie's asking, how does a person find their reviews, their grant application reviews? And I'm not sure. I just remember getting the email with, I think it came from our project officer, but I don't remember for sure.
It was attached to mine as part of our congratulations. I don't know. I know this is kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Christopher, because I didn't have that and I couldn't find it. And so I just reached out to Ronica and she sent mine to me.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So hopefully, Angie, you can get it from your project officer. And Pat, I see what we are recording this, so that's good. But I noticed Lenore had said that they were going to put the other town hall meetings on Avertech's website. I have not been able to find the other ones yet, so I don't know if they ever have been put there. And I'm not sure how to make that happen for today's session, but I will definitely work on that.
It was an email from Mary Maruvia with the link, and it's like the Avertech YouTube page.
Oh, good. Thanks for telling me.
Yeah, they're on the Avertech page.
Yeah.
As YouTube.
Wait, if you go to avertech.org, will you be able to find it? Or you have to go to YouTube and ask for
It's avertech.org and it's under RSA training and resources. And it's the first two at the very top, I believe. Or wait. Maybe not.
Those were the
Never mind, they're old ones.
Yeah, they're old ones. I was there earlier today.
I just watched part of one. But where did I say that?
And Pat, you had a question earlier about not being able to access grants.gov, and then Amanda answered you about asking your AOR. Do you know what an AOR is, Pat? Oh, looks like Pat's gone. Okay. Gail, looks like you want to say something.
I'm trying to unmute myself, but it doesn't unmute.
We can hear you now. Now you're muted again.
That's okay. It passed. It's fine. Thank you.
Okay. I want to give a chance to those who haven't said anything. Chastity or Charlene. Leanne, I know there was a question you had in the chat. I think we answered. Alvin, any of you who have not had a chance to say anything, is there any other questions you have?
You guys pretty much answered everything that I was gonna ask. Just in the discussion. The only thing that I can think of right now is I kind of want to know what everyone else has done in their objectives. If you've put in anything in there culturally, because we don't have anything in there. But I was just kind of wondering if I should include something in there so that it kind of makes us responsible for being able to tie that in for our consumers on a more yearly basis instead of just whenever and kind of going by winging that part. Like if we were to like provide like transportation for like a group of our clients to like for us, tribal canoe journey is a big thing. If like we were to take them there and spend like a day there and be able to interact with the other tribes in the area. Like especially like when our tribe is performing. If I can maybe, or should I just kind of leave it as is and not include that in the objectives? I just kind of wanted to get some thought on that.
Me personally, I would recommend that it's sort of like you have two sections. You've got, these are objectives, these, and you might call them grant deliverables. We're promising we're going to reach these goals, and that's what we really want the money for. And then over here are all of the activities we're going to do. Here's the plan, how we're going to do it. Here's our structure. Here's our logic. These things we're going to do that will help us get to this. So your cultural events that you're going to focus on, or that you're going to support or plan, those in my mind would be over here. And then you can put them over here if you want to. So we did a lot of that in our last grant, and I ended up regretting it because I think we had a total of 5 objectives that we named in our last grant. And that meant that I had 5 things I had to report in the APR. And I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to have the fewest amount of objectives as I can.
Mhm.
So it's my understanding the only 2 that we absolutely have to have are the GEPRA $10,000 per IPE and $35,000 per successful closure. Am I correct in saying that those are the only 2 things we absolutely have to have as our actual objectives?
I don't even put that in my objectives. I put that in the quality. I forget what section I put it in, but it's not my objective. I let them figure out the numbers.
Mhm.
As long as I do my budget and my numbers and I make sure that I'm not, and I'm never over that. I don't think any of our grants come close to hitting those numbers. But I don't make it objective. It's in my grant. I have a paragraph saying where my numbers are at, like with my money and stuff. But I have outreach and networking as I have one overall goal, and then I have multiple activities.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you see Amanda put in the chat, they have one goal, similar to what I described, and then Gail put, she has one goal and one objective.
Just wanted to.
Thinking that's the way to go.
Yeah, because we have 3 objectives and one for each year and under each of them, under each objective. So 1 activity per year. So we have it pretty simple, but I didn't know whether I should add in a cultural objective or not.
But again, Chastity, what you could do is put in, like Christopher said, is that those canoe journeys and stuff in your grant so that that money, they can see how you're going to spend that money.
Okay.
And then what you might want to do as a cultural, if you're going to put a cultural objective in, is increasing, I don't know, you could potentially put something in, but it doesn't hold you to specific things if things change. Like there isn't going to be a canoe journey this year, so you're not held to that, right? So then you could use that money to do another cultural activity besides just the canoe journey.
Mhm.
And then you're like stressing out, oh no, the canoe journey is not happening. What are we going to do? Then you can have that money to spend on other cultural activities where if it's your objective, you need to do that for this year.
Okay. Thank you. I was just trying to figure out how to put it in the grant so that I could put it in there correctly without making myself hide like that.
Right.
So, thank you.
Or if COVID happens again and,
Right.
it's locked down and you can't get out and do cultural activities.
Is cultural activities also like referring people to traditional healing as part of, self-care, and that will be incorporated into their IPEs? So cultural, Indian Health Service is also part of cultural practices.
I think you could say yes. You could also say if you're referring them to someone else providing the cultural service, you could call that a referral. That's part of voc rehab services, is referring people. But if you're providing the actual cultural service, or you're paying for them to go to another place that provides cultural service, then in our program, that's when we would count it as actually providing a cultural service. So for example, if someone needed gas money to get to a traditional healer and we provided them the gas money, we might call that a cultural service in the sense that we're paying for, we're providing some funding that's helping them get to a cultural service. But if we just said, here's the name of someone you might consider going to, I would call that a referral.
I put the link to the recordings in the chat, and I also resent the email to the 121 listserv.
Yeah, so what I'm curious about is I see the link, but how do I get today's session posted there?
You
Would you
could,
send it to Wayne?
or talk with Earlson probably too.
Okay, Earlson. Okay, that's a good idea. Okay. Perfect. Charlene and Leanne and Alvin, any of you have anything left? You haven't really spoken up.
How many people are ready to actually submit or upload their documents?
No.
No.
We have to route ours to
Oh, yeah.
administration by next week, and then hopefully with that turnaround, we can submit it before the 26th.
Yeah. Yeah, same here.
I just want to tell you all my sad, sad story. I was in your group at one time, but I was 36 seconds late to submitting mine, and it gives you a timestamp. Because I had a new grant person who didn't understand grants.gov, and I had got all my stuff a month early, and we were going through the process. I went through the process, and she had other grants she was supposedly getting done, and I got it anyway, 36 seconds late the day it was due because she forgot her passcode and password. So even though it was on her desk a month before time. So be aware of your person who has to enter, because at our tribe, only one person has the password and stuff for grants.gov. We don't, everybody doesn't have it. So I wish you all well and great success, and I know you all will do wonderful.
Good.
I'm gonna try to hit the button on the 22nd, or at least, so I have the authority, but it wouldn't be kosher for me to do that. I have 2 others, and then of course our CFO. So I guess there's 3 that could technically.
Mhm.
Wow, I wish I had somebody else personally. Yeah, it's just me. And I've just been assigned into that section, and it took forever to get there. So that'll be my first grants.gov. I mean, I actually really like G5, so this has just been a lot of bureaucratic stuff. But yeah, I wish I had a grant person to be helping, and or even fiscal to volunteer to help. I did have my program director that's basically asked me what I need, so I do have a little bit of support. But thank you
Would
guys
definitely start
very
doing,
much.
you know, after everything's uploaded and you've approved, I would definitely shoot for, you know, if it's a work day, Friday, the 22nd at least,
Mhm.
or even no later than the 25th. I mean, I think we've hit the button early in the morning on the deadline, but I mean, just talking about it is making me want to throw up.
Right? Yeah. Well, the
Anxiety right now.
council
I'm feeling
isn't
a tiny
even
bit-
going to hear me. They're not even going to hear it. And I have to do the request to submit, then I have to do this, the second request to submit. And then I'll have to come back to accept the submittal of once we're approved. But yeah, I can't even get on until the 21st. So,
Mhm.
and hopefully they'll say yes.
Well, one of the good things is that, you know, remember last time our grant was due at the end of July, and it
Yeah,
took
I know. I was
May.
ready for that instead of now.
Yeah.
But we'll know earlier.
Yep.
We'll know earlier to find another job.
Yep. I agree. All right, I have another meeting I have to lead, so I'm gonna sign off. Yeah, you guys are welcome to stay on if you want to.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep.
Thank you, Christopher, for doing the link.
Yep, no problem. I'm glad. All right, you guys have a great day.